Sometimes in life, being late to something is still better than never arriving at all, and that is 100% true for something like Pokemon. I never was a Pokemon kid growing up in the 2000s. I remember it being a popular thing for a couple years in elementary school, presumably around the time Diamond and Pearl came out, because I remember some kids in my grade being obsessed with Piplup. Although my parents fully supported me playing the likes of Mario, Zelda, SpongeBob, I guess Pokemon was where they drew the line out of fear of me getting bullied for being a little too much of a nerd. And to be fair, I could have gotten into it in high school during the 3DS game era, but I too was a victim of trying to look cool and thus never even bothered trying a Pokemon game until my senior year of high school, where I'd accepted it by that point that I was very much not cool. I began playing a little known game by the name of Pokemon FireRed on a Game Boy Advance emulator on my phone, which happened to be an Android. 2 weeks later, before I could finish the game, my parents got me an iPhone for Christmas since my old phone was cracked, and because Apple was so against emulators back then, I lost all my progress. Fast forward to the summer of 2025 and I decided to give it another try after the Switch 2 versions of Scarlet and Violet won me over and had me hooked. Except this time I played Leaf Green, to be a little different. So here is a review of Pokemon FireRed and Leaf Green from a brand new Pokemon fan. Released in 2004 for the Game Boy Advance, Pokemon FireRed and Leaf Green are full remakes of the original Pokemon Red, Blue, and Japan's Pokemon Green. And I guess sort of Pokemon Yellow too. They're not just nostalgia plays, they reimagine the Kanto region with Game Boy Advance graphics, updated music, quality of life improvements, and new mechanics that I really appreciated, like the running shoes, thankfully. But as far as being compared to Pokemon Yellow, well, I guess I could say Pikachu's in the game. The structure in the game still mirrors the originals, and of course the traditional Pokemon formula. 8 gym badges, Pokemon League, post-game surprises. The big change? Mechanics from Ruby and Sapphire enter in, like abilities, natures, held items, and modernized movesets. You can catch Pokemon from the first 3 generations once beating the main game and unlocking the national dex, meaning Kanto is just the appetizer for this juicy meal, but we'll talk about that near the end of the video. Just like the original Pokemon Red and Blue, Leaf Green and Fire Red start you out in Pallet Town as a protagonist that can be named whatever you want. I chose to call myself Dummy, but the canon name is Red, or Ash if you want to go with the anime route. You can choose between any of the 3 iconic Kanto starter Pokemon. Bulbasaur, the grass starter who will evolve into Ivysaur and later Venusaur, Squirtle, the water starter who will evolve into Wartortle and then Blastoise, and finally the fire starter Charmander who will evolve into Charmeleon and then the famed Charizard. My first time playing the game in high school, I went with Squirtle, who was probably my favorite starter this generation, but this time around I wanted to do something different, so I decided to roll with Charmander. As it turns out, picking Bulbasaur or even Squirtle would have made things much easier in the beginning of the game with the first couple gyms. And Charmander, well, I found out the hard way, it's quite the opposite for those who pick the fire starter. Of course, it wouldn't be a Pokemon game if your rival named, what was it, Gary? Blue? Oh, no. It was Stupid. That's it. Stupid. Anyways, he comes in and chooses whichever Pokemon is super effective against yours. So, Stupid chose Squirtle for me. Now why couldn't he have went with Bulbasaur? Man, Bulbasaur is like my least favorite of the 3. First off, after visiting Viridian City and the gym leader supposedly not being home for challenging, we traveled to Pewter City to challenge Brock, who is apparently light years away from us. While for most who will roll through Brock's gym, I struggled because, well, Brock resists fire. He actually turned out to be pretty rock hard. Ooh, wait, hang on a second. In the end, you'll never believe how I beat him. That's right, I just leveled up Charmander until he learned a steel type move, and I used that. Talk about making things much harder than it needed to be. Next up, we have good old Misty herself leading the water gym. Her Staryu and Starmie, especially Starmie's speed and water pulse, will wipe you if you're underleveled. This was yet another gym where choosing Charizard just didn't quite help me out. Even though I had evolved him to Charmeleon by this point, electric types like Pikachu would have been the obvious choice. But I refused to use one because, to me, using Pikachu in a Pokemon game is like using Mario in Mario Kart or Super Smash Bros. Like, come on, all those choices and you went with the poster child of the series, the one who's on the cover of the game? No, I decided to just go grab a Bellsprout and use it. Even though I don't care for Bellsprout whatsoever, I just had to put my opinions aside and join together for the sake of the gym battles. and I was planning on ditching it after that, but yeah, I got guilt tripped into keeping it. Next up we have Lieutenant Surge over in Vermilion City, where his Raichu is the main threat. It's got high speed and decent attack. Luckily enough, Diglett's cave is conveniently nearby, which is basically the game handing you the answer key and offering up Digletts like Simba from The Lion King. Me? Well, I actually chose to go with one of the most overpowered and diabolical Pokemon to ever exist. I love Diglett, but you know I just had to recruit to my team the one and only Sandshrew. Man, all my homies love Sandshrew. Also, the trash can puzzle held me up longer than it probably should have. And for the fourth gym in the game, finally a gym where Charmeleon can run through the team like me running through a Cane's box combo. Erica in the grass gym was essentially no match for me. I'll be fair though, she was probably too occupied trying to watch out for that creep outside the gym, staring in because the gym is full of women. I think what he means to say is they're full of strong trainers. The Celadon department store is probably more dangerous than Erica, as half the fun is blowing your cash on TMs and the stat boost drinks. After getting halfway through the 8 gyms, it's time to celebrate by checking out what I found to be another rather easy gym. Koga in the poison gym just didn't seem to give me much trouble. The intended strategy would have been to use psychic types here to completely wreck these Mon, but your friendly neighborhood Pokemon noob decided to muscle it out with the Mon that he already had, which by this point I believe was Charmeleon, Sandshrew, whatever this guy's name is, Jigglypuff, and Machoke, I think? Anyways, apologies for not remembering. I tend to only remember the team that I finish with. Good old Saffron City. Here the Psychic Gym leader Sabrina uses Kadabra, Mr. Mime, and Alakazam, which will wreck you if you are not prepared. Gen 3's Dark types aren't available in Kanto, so you're stuck using other options like maybe Bug, except for the fact that Bug might be my least favorite type of them all, so yep, I just powered through with all my other Pokemon. Only 2 gyms left, and the 7th, found on Cinnabar Island, is home to Blaine and his fiery team. Here would have been a perfect place to let a water type use Surf and clean house. Except, yeah, I didn't grab a water type, and I never bothered to level any up. Nope, instead of all things, I caught the second Snorlax you find in the game after accidentally fainting the first, and I just decided to teach him Surf, because why not? If anything, it kind of made it funny seeing my character surf around on what I pretended to be a giant Snorlax with a turbojet engine propelling the water out from his butthole. Last but not least, we come back to the previously abandoned gym in Viridian City, which is now mysteriously open. As it turns out, the gym leader is none other than Giovanni himself. By this point, you've seen all of his Mon, so you know to expect ground type. The irony is that Giovanni spends the whole game as the criminal mastermind Team Rocket boss, but then he just politely gives you a badge like you're cool, like nothing happened. And also for those wondering, yes, I did skip over some non-gym areas. There's plenty in the game, like navigating the various routes, the caves, the SS Anne in the Pokemon Tower, which is apparently where you unalive your rival's Raticate. There's also Sylph Tower with all of its confusing warp spaces, but hey, at least we got a cool Super Smash Bros. Stage out of it. There's also some optional areas I'll discuss here in a bit, but first I'd like to take the time to celebrate FireRed and LeafGreen's best and worst Mon. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, for the very first inaugural episode of Best and Worst Mon, I'd like to start off by letting you know that this is a mix of both fact from stats and then also my own opinion and experiences sprinkled in. So, no hold up, let's start with the best Mon first. First up, we have the Nido King, Nido Queen tree. Supposedly these guys are very versatile TM learners, which I never knew because I never bothered to use mine that I caught. Next up we have Alakazam, who is a very wonderful and spectacular special attacker. If you can trade evolve, it's basically a cheat code. I wouldn't know because I played mine on an emulator and my Abra I caught was not helpful as it only knew teleport and I gave up on him early in the game sadly. We also have Gyarados. Gyarados is one of my all-time favorite Pokemon, fun fact, because it starts as a useless Magikarp and then becomes a monster wrecking machine. I didn't use it this time, however, because without XP share like in the newer games, I never leveled up my Magikarp, and I never went out of my way to even bother seeing if you could catch a Gyarados. Last but not least, a Pokemon that I actually did use, yes, I know, crazy. We have Sandshrew and Sandslash. Look, I know this guy might not seem like much, but trust me, by the end of the game, my Sandslash I had named Bates after my good buddy who absolutely adores them was an unstoppable threat to anybody and everybody who disrespected him. And now it's time for the picks for this game's worst Mon. First up we have Farfetch'd. After playing Sword and Shield and loving Surfetch'd, I thought for sure this guy was going to be one of my superstars. He wasn't. Next up we have Ditto. Ditto is a fun idea, a lot less fun in practice. He really shouldn't be caught unless you want to complete your Pokedex or use it for breeding. Next we have Jinx. Listen here, Jinx might not actually be all that bad, but in the Elite Four battle with the Ice types, I wanted to chew on a Geodude because that sounded like way more fun than getting spammed with Sweet Kiss over and over again. Last but not least, this spot is going to a ragtag tag team of Mon that I got so incredibly tired of seeing all game, every time I happened to battle a Team Rocket Grunt. Yes, I'm looking at you, Rattata and Coughing Tree. Respectfully, I would never like to see you ever again. Alright, so now it's time to get the legendaries caught. So let's start with my favorite of the three, Articuno, out in the Seafoam Islands. Navigating here is basically a boulder pushing simulator, and I didn't really care for it to be honest. But having an elite ice type like Articuno already so high leveled with a move like Ice Beam was so clutch for me. Articuno was undoubtedly useful in the Elite Four battles against the Dragonmon, but more on that in a second. Next up we have Zapdos, who is probably the easiest to reach in the power plant, but might also be the strongest competitively. Catching Zapdos felt like cheating for the rest of the game, especially after already having Articuno, but its Drill Peck did wonders for me, and its design with the spiky head is really cool. Finally we have Moltres, who was moved from Victory Road in the originals to Mount Ember in the remakes. Moltres was probably the least useful to use, but at least for me, since my Charizard was already nearly up to level 50, but it's still cool to have all three, which, not even joking, I got using 24 Ultra Balls. When I had got Zapdos on ball number 3, I was laughing so hard since my friend said the 30 I had bought prior might not even be enough for one of them. After grabbing all the optional legendary birds, my team was now complete, with Charizard, Sandslash, Snorlax, Articuno and Zapdos, and Victory Bell, I think? I don't know, whatever this guy is. It's this one right here, this guy. I went off to Victory Road and started the 4 consecutive battles against opponents who are actually known as the Elite Four, not the Final Four like I had been saying all game. First up is Lorelei, who uses Ice type, and like I previously mentioned, Jinx is a giant turd. However, Charizard did make quick work of her team. Then we have Bruno and his team of fighters. Luckily, Zapdos was so fast that he took care of most of their team, outside of some trouble with their rock moves, which Snorlax and his Surf were able to help out with. Next we have Agatha and her Poison type. Well, technically Ghosts, but they're not even all Ghosts. But anyways, this team was probably the most frustrating of the 4, mainly because they kept spamming Hypnosis and poison-inducing moves that forced me to play the long game, but eventually, I came out on top. Last of the Elite Four, we have Lance, who utilizes a Dragon-type team, or should I say a pseudo-Dragon-type team? I see you, Aerodactyl and Gyarados. Look, this guy probably would have been my downfall had I not caught Articuno and just spammed Ice Beam on his Dragon-type, and used that one Grassmon I had, I don't remember his name, for Gyarados and Aerodactyl. Of course, the real final battle is against your rival, who ends up having a run so short he could have filmed the entire thing and still had some leftover room in his TikTok. His team is honestly pretty decent leveled, but it gave me no trouble, as at this point there was just no stopping Dummy in his team. My MVP award for this playthrough definitely goes to Articuno, and my most underrated Mon of the playthrough is easily Snorlax, for fitting the giant gap that was my lack of Watermon and water moves. As far as the post-game content goes, beating the main story opens up brand new areas with their own quests, such as the Sevi Islands. The first 3 islands are visited mid-story after beating the Cinnabar Island gym and being taken there by Bill, but the post-game unlocks the rest. And you're also allowed to catch Pokemon from Johto and Hoenn after getting the National Dex. You can also do the Elite Four rematch, where the different trainers will have higher levels and different Pokemon, including some Johtomon. These guys are much tougher the second time around. And of course you can catch Mewtwo, which I haven't gotten around to doing yet because I think in order to do so, You have to have retrieved both a ruby and a sapphire from the Sevi Islands, which is only accessible once you get the National Dex, which can only be obtained after you catch 60 Pokemon, but I only bothered to catch 28 throughout my playthrough because I was playing on an emulator with no way to trade, and so I never bothered trying to complete the Pokédex. Look, I'm sorry. Shame me, go right on ahead. Maybe if someone would gift me a Game Boy Advance SP with a physical version of the game, and you know those adapters you had to use that were necessary for trading, I'd do it. FireRed and LeafGreen aren't just remakes. They're the reason so many players rediscovered Kanto after years away. They're the originals, with some modern polish, plus just enough new content to keep veterans interested. And as someone who didn't grow up with Pokemon, look, I was hesitant to try it out, as I was worried that it would be too dated for me, or that I missed the golden ages to play the games when I was a kid, and could better emotionally attach to the games in the various Pokemon. Thankfully, however, I was very wrong in that regard, and after having a blast with Leaf Green, I'm actually playing through Heart Gold, and I'm in the post-game right now, and after that I plan on playing Alpha Sapphire, and just playing all the different games in order. I even plan on getting my first ever Pokemon game at launch with Pokemon ZA. Maybe every time I finish a game, I'll cover what I thought in a video, if you're interested. If you enjoyed this video and stayed till the end, I really appreciate you. Consider leaving a like, a fun comment, or maybe even subscribe. My next video will be me ranking all 151 Gen 1 Pokemon. It'll be a wild time, so see y'all next time.